Thank you very much. So the task I have to accomplish today is talking about melatonin, and especially melatonin and reproduction. As you all know already, melatonin is a hormone that it seems that everybody knows about it, but in reality, nobody knows much about it. In Italy, sometimes when we have something that we don't like, we say we have to take off a stone from a shoe. So I will do this because we have to understand very well what melatonin is, and especially in the last part of my presentation, how to use melatonin, and we don't have to make big mistakes that usually people make in the use of melatonin. So as you can see in the bottom line, I'm here in Roma. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there due to the pandemic, of course, and I hope that in Bulgaria, you are recovering as we are doing right now in Italy. Okay, melatonin. When we talk about melatonin, we suddenly think about rhythms, and rhythms are what are driving our life. In the evolution system, who is able to adapt to the external rhythms has advantages. And the adaptation ability depends from many factors. The power to synchronize our internal environment, as for instance, the sleep-wake cycle, the temperature cycle, and so on, with those outside constitutes an important advantage. To this purpose, a complex mechanism has been developed that is able to generate an endogenous rhythmicity. Every single cell of our organism has an intrinsic rhythm, but this rhythm has to be synchronized with the outside. Otherwise, we have problems, and as we will see later. And we have to communicate this synchrony to the entire organism. And in this last part is involved melatonin. Data, in fact, as I said earlier, data from the literature indicate that prolonged alterations of the circadian rhythms are associated to a reduced life expectancy. And this is very important. An aphorism of Benjamin Franklin says, "Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." So we have to respect external rhythmicity. Circadian rhythm dysfunctions have a negative impact on human functioning in everyday life, of course. We all know this. One of the main problems is the alteration of the sleep-wake cycle, but a lot of other problems and cycles are involved. Chronodisruption leads to a series of consequences as decreased melatonin synthesis, metabolic dysregulation, and whatever else, included the reproductive impairment. In fact, as you all know, especially in animals, we have a connection between the ability of reproduction and winter and summer and spring, in order to give the animal the possibility to give rise to other animals safely. So what is happening? Slides are not going. Let's see. Okay. And melatonin has been shown to synchronize the circadian rhythms and improve the onset, duration, and quality of sleep. So let's see a little bit what melatonin is, or what is the gland that is producing melatonin. Here in the left part, I think you can see the arrow, my arrow that I'm moving. This is a pine, and of course, the pine is the pineal because it has the shape of the pine of a pine cone, and therefore the name pineal. It is also called epiphysis, and it is the only endocrine organ directly connected to the outside environment. Its weight is about 150 milligrams in humans, and this last part is the most important. The blood flow inside the pineal, with respect to other organs, of course, per weight and time units, is the highest except to the renal flow. So this means that inside the entire brain is passing less blood than inside the single pineal gland. So I think this is kind of important. And other things are important. This is how the system works. I will not go through all this, of course, this kind of thinking about how the system works, and is coming melatonin from tryptophan through serotonin and then melatonin. Melatonin is not stored. It is produced and released inside the blood flow. What is melatonin? Oh, it is very simple because it is a highly conserved molecule. And that means that it exists in its form without changes since 2-3 billions of years. Now this is something really important. One more thing to take into consideration. It is the same molecule. And again, every living organism does contain melatonin. And it is, again, a simple molecule. So you can have in your mind the picture of a very ubiquitous molecule. And it's very simple. It doesn't exist a melatonin of a mouse. It doesn't exist a melatonin of human. It doesn't exist a melatonin of an elephant. It is always the same melatonin. It is lipophilic, and therefore its activity is shown either through receptor binding sites and also through a direct diffusion into the cell, easily crossing cell membranes. Melatonin's main activities are dealing with its ability, and we all know this, to synchronize endogenous rhythms with the external environment, and its ability that is important, very important, especially for reproduction, and its ability to act as a potent antioxidant molecule. Let's say the most potent antioxidant, endogenous antioxidant molecule. Of course, melatonin has a circadian rhythm, and with highest levels during the night and lowest levels during the day. We all know this. This is blood melatonin, the green one. But the main information is this one in the bottom at your right. Each of us has a kind of fingertips as far as melatonin rhythm is concerned, because each of us has the same night melatonin peak all over life, except when we are very young, before puberty, that we have a lot of melatonin, much more than the adults. And the second change of melatonin rhythm is when we get older, because melatonin rhythm is decreasing I'm referring to the highest levels during the night. So each of us has a special high level of melatonin during the night. And when the organism changes this for any reason, changes this rhythm, the organism can have problems. Oh, so I said high melatonin during the night and low melatonin during the day. And this is because light inhibits melatonin synthesis. And it is the most potent external stimulus, and there are others that is able to inhibit melatonin synthesis. The least light intensity that is able to reduce melatonin synthesis is very low. It is about 100 lux. That is very low amount of light that is prolonged for a sufficient period, of course. Aging is able to reduce light transmittance through eye structures. And this is something that is changing the message of melatonin inhibition. Other factors exist that are able to reduce melatonin synthesis as temperature decrease and sounds. And again, and this is very important, this last sentence, because it's opening a very big problem of the so-called light pollution. And I have a couple of slides later. A particular light color that is a blue light that has a wavelength of 460 nanometers actively inhibits melatonin secretion. Where do we find blue light? Oh, it is very easy in our cellular phones, in our tablets, in our computers. So if we use them during the evening and the night, melatonin rhythm can be blunted. This is why some brands are changing at a certain hour, at a certain time, they change the color of the screen towards the yellow light that is reducing melatonin much, much less than blue light. But we will be talking about this topic a little bit later. So we have been talking of rhythms, we have been talking of melatonin, and we have been talking of melatonin and rhythmic functions. Of course, how melatonin is communicating its own message to the cells, to every cell of our organism. Well, melatonin binds to membrane receptors. MT1 are involved in synchronizing activities, and then MT2 are involved in metabolic activities. In such way, the melatonin message is driven directly to the cell. Therefore, the cellular activity synchronizes with the external environment rhythms. In this view, melatonin circadian rhythm modifications are able to alter subjects' well-being, of course. Well, as I said, melatonin and sleep are very strictly connected. One important thing we have to say that melatonin is not an hypnotic drug when it is used in therapy. Melatonin is able to facilitate the sleep because it reduces core body temperature, it reduces sleep latency, and it reduces phase 2 latency. Increases drowsiness. Oh, this is a very nice situation, especially in winter. Increases skin heat dispersion. You see, if you read all that, you can see, oh, these are all the things that I'm feeling when I'm beginning to go into sleep. And this is exactly what it's happening, because, as I said, melatonin is not an hypnotic. It doesn't force us to sleep. It is preparing the way to sleep and increases the sleep quality. And the last sentence, I think, is kind of important, because it is able to increase dream number per night and the efficiency of a dream. A person that is taking melatonin is usually saying, "Oh, doctor, I started to dream again." And this is quite of amelioration of also sleep quality. So melatonin is not an hypnotic, as I said, and melatonin is believed to be able to open the so-called sleep gate. But the synchronizing ability of melatonin is not the main, is one of the main activities of melatonin. The other one, as important as the synchronizing ability, is the ability to be as antioxidant. Here is the antioxidant mechanism, and we are producing free radicals. We are oxidating our organism, physiologically oxidating, and the antioxidant mechanism is constituted by a complex series of factors. And the reproductive system is one of the most sensitive systems in this view, very sensitive. You see here some kind of attempt to show you the antioxidant mechanism, and melatonin is a very big part of it. Has two actions, one direct action, because melatonin is a potent free radical scavenger. And as you see from the bottom sentence in green, it is kind of terminal antioxidant, or better, a suicidal antioxidant, because melatonin, it is used and it is consumed. And if you have not enough, you get oxidized. And it also has an indirect action because it stimulates other antioxidants. Oh, 1995, a very big, important activity about the knowledge of melatonin, and many books went out. Well, actually, this one is a book that I wrote in 2005. That is a translation of my book of 1995. Well, what if we, or the external environment, or whatever else, disrupt melatonin rhythm? Well, these can happen at any age. We can have decreased melatonin peak at night, reduced light exposure. Well, the organism likes the big difference, all white, all black. Or the organism doesn't like gray. So when it is light, you have to be exposed at light. When it is night, you doesn't have to be exposed to light to guarantee the synchronism with the external environment. Today, 35 minutes per day of bright light compared to 58 minutes per day of middle-aged adults. We have a big reduction. So reduced light exposure due to physiological aging changes. Of course, age is negative to light and to melatonin. Blue light at night, light pollution. This is something that is very, very important today. You see, by the years, this is the amount of light in the United States, in Europe, and of course here I brought you data about Italy. Look at this. Look at 2025, how much light we will have. Too much light, light pollution. This is modifying melatonin. Artificial light may alter circadian rhythms through the modification of melatonin rhythm. These alterations have a role, as I said earlier, and in the reproduction too. We will see later. As an example, female shift workers, nurses for instance, demonstrate a higher risk to develop breast cancer. This is something very well known. Melatonin administration contributes to resynchronize altered circadian rhythms and to fully restore the efficacy of the antioxidant system. So melatonin is used for both resynchronization of circadian rhythms as an antioxidant molecule. But there are some problems. We will be talking about these problems in the last part of my presentation. That will be in 7-8 hours from now. Oh no, of course I'm joking. Light pollution is a very big problem because it's changing melatonin rhythm in young people too, especially in young people. These are data from a very big study that I did a few years ago in a very big population of exposed people to electromagnetic fields, exposed and non-exposed. You can see very easily the big difference. This is urinary melatonin. Day urinary melatonin is low in non-exposed, as it should be. And night urinary melatonin is high, indicating a big rhythm, big difference. So these individuals have a very sharp difference, indicating that they have a rhythm. Look at this. The exposed people to electromagnetic fields, they do not have enough difference to show a melatonin rhythm. Of course, they had physical consequences, included alterations of the sleep. Well, what about the topic of my talk? What about the effects of melatonin and the reproductive system? Well, the physiological melatonin increases. There is an S missing during winter days, and it induces the temporary gonadal regression in rodents. We all know this. But luckily, humans, we are not so sensitive to melatonin seasonal variation. We can reproduce any time of the year. However, one of the first discovered roles for melatonin in humans concerning the reproductive system was its involvement in the mechanism of puberty. We all know that melatonin keeps the system not activated. And in fact, this hormone seems to act through its inhibitory activity of GnRH secreting neurons. So GnRH doesn't work and nothing else lower than it works. The reduction of this inhibition allows GnRH to achieve its physiological pulsatility at night as puberty progresses. So this was one of the first discovered role roles for melatonin, but there are others. Altered blood melatonin concentrations are associated to infertility in male patients. So melatonin is useful, especially as antioxidants. And as I said earlier, the reproductive system is one of the most sensitive systems in this view. So we need melatonin. And in fact, melatonin is well present in male sperms and the female oocytes. We will see this later. I believe in the next slide, if I remember well. Hypogonadal men demonstrate melatonin rhythm alterations, and melatonin receptors have been documented in the prostate, in the spermatozoa. I remember this very nice picture when we did this with sperms that were enlightened, indicating the presence of melatonin receptors on them. And of course, in the ovary too. In infertile astenospermic patients, melatonin levels are decreased in seminal fluids. So these sentences are indicating that melatonin is useful. Well, let's say not only to synchronize the entire organism, and with this, in this view, the organism will function better, but mainly it is important in the reproductive system, its antioxidant activity. It has been well established that melatonin has a protective role in the testis and the ovary in terms of oxidative stress protection, as I said. But let's go ahead. Free radicals production, of course, is part of the normal ovarian activity. Even though their excess may negatively influence female fertility, we all know this, of course. And it is well known that melatonin has a protective role on follicular maturations. It reduces the apoptosis and on oocyte development, and it reduces the oxidative damage. And on the luteal phase, the ovary is able to produce, this is very important, the ovary is able to produce its own melatonin. The ovary has the machinery to produce its own melatonin. Earlier, let's say a couple of decades ago, we thought that melatonin could be produced by the pineal gland only. Now we can easily say, because we found the machinery inside the ovary and also inside the mitochondria. And this is very important, confirming the great role for melatonin in the antioxidant process. An association has been documented between follicular fluid melatonin concentrations and oocytes quality. Restoring melatonin levels allows a complete follicular development and a more suitable oocytes for fertilization. And it is commonly used in these techniques. This is an important paper. If you want, you can read it, even if it is 2014. Well, it is not very young as a paper, but it's well written. In addition, data of the literature indicate a synergistic positive activity between melatonin and inositol. These are new data in both male and female infertile patients. On one side, melatonin acts as a radical scavenger and antioxidant molecule optimizing gametes production. And on the other side, inositol, as you know, I'm sure, ameliorates metabolic disturbances that may be one of the cause of infertility, as in PCOS, for instance. And the efficiency of sperms too. Inositol is working on sperms too. Well, how we can do to fix these things, how we can use melatonin. And I wrote there, what have we missed? The therapy with melatonin is not that simple. And this is the message, unfortunately, that passed to patients. Oh, well, I have problems with sleep. Oh, well, let's take melatonin. I went to the drugstore and took the first melatonin I saw, and I took melatonin. Oh, no, melatonin is not working for me. Well, this is something that the patients, they should not do. Absolutely. A lot of mistakes are arising from the use, the non-correct use of melatonin. So let's see what we have today and what we missed. There are many today available preparations, and I put in the center here 1 milligram and 2 milligrams because this is something very bad that happened in 2015. I have no idea, I'm sorry for that, but I have no idea what is in Bulgaria. But here in Italy and other countries of Europe, well, melatonin as supplement cannot be sold more than 1 milligram per tablet or whatever else, because a drug exists that is 2 milligrams. Before 2015, we had at our disposal preparations containing melatonin of 3 milligrams, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams. And sometimes we have to use these amounts of melatonin. Unfortunately, due to the fact that from 2015, a drug came out containing 2 milligrams of melatonin, of course, no more supplement with a content of melatonin more than 2 milligrams, of course. So this is unpaired the situation, because 1 milligram is most of the times is a too low amount of melatonin to be used. Well, as you can see here, we have roughly 2 different kind of preparations. Fast release that you see here in this red one curve, and slow release melatonin preparations. That is something like this, and controlled release, many possibilities. Of course, this difference is important because we have usually, we have 2 big groups of patients. The one that has problems in getting into sleep, and the other is that you wake up during the night more than once. So according to the type of sleep of the patient, or the sleep problem, you can use one or the other kind of preparation. Melatonin is something very highly used all over the world. This is something from the US, and the sales of melatonin increased from 2007 to 2012 from $90 million to $260 million in 5 years. And look at that, what happened. In 2014, more than 62% of all the drugs sold for insomnia were melatonin-containing preparations. 535 million of US. Well, how melatonin goes into our organism? Well, the fast release preparations are very fast usually. And in fact, after one hour, more or less, no more melatonin or very low amount of melatonin in our blood. So this is showing again that you can use fast release melatonin when people have difficulties to go to sleep, and you don't have to use it if the patient is saying that he is waking up many times during the night. And this is one of the mistakes, because people are doing by themselves. Okay, I wake up during the night, go to the drugstore, take melatonin that is fast, and melatonin doesn't work, of course. This is a comparison between the rapid, the blue, and the slow release melatonin, the red one. You see the difference. The slow release is copying the natural, the physiological rhythm of melatonin. So there is a big difference between fast and slow release of melatonin. This is a work that we did many years ago. You see, this is the most important, the number of awakenings per night that is very different from fast release and slow release melatonin. And sleep quality is increasing in this kind of patients. Well, what else? Let's conclude that saying that circadian rhythms play a pivotal role in human health, and prolonged disruptions to the clock are associated with negative health consequences in concerning the reproductive system too. Melatonin is worldwide known for its well-established role as a synchronizer and a potent antioxidant molecule. We all know this right now. To that purpose, melatonin is successfully and widely used as a therapy for a large series of diseases in the patients of any age. But please consider the patient and choose the right melatonin if you decide to use it. Among them, the correction of the sleep-wake cycle disturbances and the decrease of oxidative stress are able to induce a better functioning of many systems, in our case, of course, the reproductive one. However, as I said, there is the need for a rethinking of the entire decisional process that abruptly rises when melatonin administration to humans is considered, being 1 milligram of melatonin not always adequate. So I would like to know from someone from the audience if you know if what is melatonin in Bulgaria, if you have 1 milligram too, and if you are able to find a higher content of melatonin in your preparations. And after that, I will say, as I said earlier in Italian, grazie, and thank you very much to all of you. And I brought you here some pictures of my second city, second hometown, that is San Antonio in Texas, where I spent a few years to learn what I know about melatonin. Thank you very much to all of you.